Welcome to the No More Late Fees podcast. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Jackie, and we're just two best friends and ex-Blockbuster employees rewatching some of the best and worst movies from the late 90s and early 2000s. This week, we are falling into the web and celebrating the 20th anniversary of 2002's movie and of 2002's Spider-Man. We're excited to have our pod pals from the Mike and Mike Go to the Movies podcast with us. Welcome.
Hey, guys. Appreciate you having us.
I appreciate you having the same name so I don't have to remember multiple things. The brain, not so good.
We did this for you.
This was a concerted effort.
Thank your mamas.
One of us changed our name before we started the podcast.
One day we're going to be on another pod and the girl can't remember shit. So we need to make it simple for her.
Yes.
That would be Danielle.
That was the thought.
But before we dive in, let's get into some
housekeeping.
Oh my God, that sounded like we almost got it.
Should we have joined in on that too? We did not get the memo there.
That's not in the notes.
If you love the podcast and you want to support us, here's a few ways you can.
You can become one of our Patreon besties and gain access to exclusive content, stickers, Ask Me Anythings, polls, you got it. Just head on to patreon.com/no more late fees.
And if money is tight, no worries. You can really help us out by writing us a review. Did you know writing a review and or rating us helps us to get more listeners? Like this review from Davia 10 Men. A great podcast. Jackie and Danielle really bring back great memories via their love of movies. Well worth it for any fan of the 90s and 2000s. Subscribe, everyone. 5 stars.
I thought his name was Davey.
I don't know. It's Davia.
Davia.
It looks like it's Davia.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
But now he's
Who
Davey.
knows?
Now
Dave,
it's Davey.
yeah.
We gave you a new
Davey.
name.
Ah.
Oh, I see it in the
Or
screenshot.
maybe
There's a
it's
space
maybe
there.
he's Canadian.
Yeah, there is a space there.
Maybe he's Canadian. It's Davey.
Hey.
Hey.
He's a big Degrassi fan.
Yeah.
So if you want to be featured and help us grow, head to Apple, Spotify, Podchasers, Good Pods, or your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review.
And if you want to be cool like me and have a No More Late Fees t-shirt or any merch, head to our Redbubble page at nomorelatefees.redbubble.com.
Make sure you're buying from us and not someone in Germany that stole our design.
Yeah, bitch, I'm gonna find you one day.
Is that a thing that happened to you guys?
It
It
is.
is.
Oh, geez.
I think that person's about to get knifed.
Yeah, that's
Daniel
how you
was
know,
just
that's how you know your
searching-
podcast has made it, though.
Right? Someone steals your design. Daniel was just like, Jackie. And I'm like in the middle of work and I'm like, I'm in a meeting. I don't know what to do. Someone's stealing our like $2 that we get per shirt from us. Like, and she's like, no, I already took care of that shit. I was like, oh, okay. good.
Immediately.
yeah.
Let's dive into the movie. Tell us about it.
With great power comes great responsibility. Peter Parker is just a regular high school student who, on a school field trip, is bitten by a radioactive spider, which gives him superhuman abilities of heightened senses, wall crawling, and getting swole. After honing his skills in an underground fighting ring, he is ready to swing into action, saving New York from the Green Goblin while attempting to get the girl. It stars Tobey McGuire, Kirsten Dunst, Willem, Dafoe, James Franco, and J.K. Simmons. It was written by David Cope, based on the characters by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, and it was directed by Sam Raimi. You can watch it on Peacock. But before we get started, let's get into our ratings rewind.
So you know the drill. Before we get into the movie, we'll reveal the rating our Y2K versions of ourselves would give. Then at the end, we'll see if our current selves agree with our initial rating. Our scale consists of would buy it again,
The best, would play on repeat,
5-day rental,
would watch again,
2-day rental,
okay, but nothing to write home about,
and same-day rental.
trash, straight up trash. I couldn't think of anything. I
It's
panicked.
all right. We can't always win with trash. I think we've set the bar too high.
We have.
So I will start with Mike D. What is your
Yes.
rating?
When I was a little baby in 2002,
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, buy it. Come on.
All right. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, 100% would buy it again. Whatever the highest rating I could have possibly given this movie. This came out when I was 9 years old.
Okay, time out. Y'all can't reference your fucking age no more. I can't take this shit anymore. When I was near a full adult when this movie came out.
You got to understand how monumental this movie was for a 9-year-old.
Jackie? Because we waited in line. Remember, we waited in line for this. Like,
Did you really?
yes, we
My
got
friend's
there
mom took me,
early.
my other friend.
So 2002, we were in college. And
I was at
we
least double
did-
digits, I'll say.
we did wait in line. Like, I think we bought the tickets early and then
Yeah.
got there early and waited in line to get into the theater, because for anyone who's not old enough to remember, seats used to be first come, first serve.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Right.
I would wait in line for like sometimes up to 2 hours for a movie I wanted really good seats for. And then my other friends and stuff would join me in line as it got closer to
You
showtime.
lay your jackets out across the
It was,
seats.
yes, exactly. Like popcorn here, soda here, purse in the middle.
And
Yep.
fights. There would be
Yeah.
fights.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is one you definitely would have had to do that for, because I believe this movie was the first movie ever to make $100 million domestically in its opening weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was big. It was a big deal.
Yep.
Y2K Jackie was not impressed. And so I would probably do a 5-day rental. I think I did watch it when it came out on DVD again, but I most certainly did not buy it.
I have it.
So do I.
I did buy it. I don't recall.
You don't know why?
Yeah. And well, see, the thing is, like, so my baby brother loves Spider-Man. Like, I think it was like one of the first complex words he could say. And so it was our thing that I would take him to see all the Spider-Man movies. Whether I love them or not, I just know that I went to see them. And me being a comic book nerd and just loving comic book characters, I was so excited during this time when we had like this resurgence. So I think that was a part of it. I didn't know it could get better at the time, you know?
Mhm.
So it was a would buy it for me in 2002. Yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Tell us about the box office, Danielle.
Sure. Glad you asked. So the movie had a budget of $139 million. We all know Sony at the time, all the Marvel movies, the rights were sold off to different studios, and Sony got their Spidey hands on it, and they put a lot of money behind it. And then in its opening weekend, it made $100 million, like Mike said. And then worldwide, it made $825 million. It was the third highest grossing movie of 2002 worldwide. I believe the only thing that beat it was The Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, $936.6 million. Fuck. A lot
Best
of
Picture
money.
nominee, Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers.
Yes. And then Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets at $878.9 million. And then Spider-Man trailing at $825.
We had a lot of extra spending money in 2002 to go see all these fucking movies.
We were living in a time. It was a golden age. We were having the fucking times of our lives going to the movies at that time. I wish I could go back.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start a podcast and talk about that time, Jackie.
There you go. That's a good idea. You should try something like that.
Yeah, you should write that down.
Yeah, no, it is fun. Whenever Mike and I like look through, like, because with on the Goldblum / Michelle Yeoh podcast now / Nicolas Cage, it's tough to refer to it now. We always go through like the box office for whatever like was that weekend when that movie came out. And I remember, like, whenever we're in like the 90s or 2000s, it's like, man, we kind of watch all of these movies like right now.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the newer box offices, it's more just like, a lot of these like were not very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You
all
know?
the same stuff from the 90s again.
Yeah.
now.
It
It's like-
is.
Right.
It's
But worse for the most
regurgitation.
part.
Before we dive into the movie, we have to talk about the whole casting situation. Sam Raimi is a huge Spider-Man like fan. Like he loved
Mhm.
Spider-Man, the comic books, and he had to fight like hell to even be able to like get this.
I mean, they were trying to make this for such a long time, and James Cameron was trying to make this like in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like there was going to be a James
What?
Cameron version. Did you not know
Yeah.
that, Mike?
No?
Oh yeah, no, there was a James Cameron version. His script was leaked online, I think, a while back, and I don't think I ever read it, but it sounded wild, and I don't think it would have been feasible to make happen just in terms of like mid 90s where we were at with CGI at that point. I mean, if
He would
anybody
have
could
just
have,
built it. Like
Yeah.
that's what James
True.
Cameron does.
Yeah,
Him
and
and Lucas, they're like, we ain't got it. We're gonna make it.
yeah, if anybody could have made it look good in that time, it probably would have been James Cameron.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like, I think the story itself was like bug nuts, like absolutely insane. And, you know, it just never really got off the ground for whatever reason, one way or another. Cycled through a few different filmmakers, and Sam Raimi was like not necessarily the first choice in the list. He was
He
like,
wasn't
you know,
even on the list.
yeah,
What?
exactly. Because you think about it, Sam Raimi at this point, he's like best known. I mean, he would have had a couple of studio movies at this point, but he's best known for making like the super weird Evil Dead trilogy of
Yeah.
movies,
Right.
which rule, but like studios, like it's a weird thing to be like the guy who made the Evil Dead. Let's hire him to make Spider-Man. Like,
Yeah.
it's a leap you have to make in your mind in order
Yeah.
to get there.
But when the passion is there.
Yes.
I
Exactly.
forgot who actually advocated. Someone advocated for him. I can't remember off the top of my head. What I do love is the story that I believe Stephen King was one of the first people to advocate for Sam Raimi to like be able to make movies.
Mhm.
And he
for
was
him-
one of the first people to see the Evil Dead, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which I think is very cool. And then Tobey McGuire, again, I don't know if that bitch was on the list originally, but
Very unlikely casting choice, especially
yes.
at that time. Yeah.
but I know they offered it to Leonardo DiCaprio and he said no, but you know, his brosive was like, he's like, you got to talk to Tobey. You got to look at my
Why?
brother here. Don't know
No.
why. Thin lips don't care. That's all I call. And we were doing the new guy and I found out because I watched Eliza Dushku was being interviewed and she said that he had to kind of prove that he could be Spider-Man. They couldn't believe him as an action hero kind of situation. So they did like a huge reading with all the Sony execs. And he asked Eliza if she could read with him. And after that reading, that secured that he was going to get the job.
Interesting.
But she was like, and I didn't get Mary Jane.
Rough.
So other actors considered Freddie Prinze Jr.,
No.
Scott Speedman.
Yes.
That's Speedman.
The Speed Renaissance.
That's right. It's upon us.
Happening. Yes, he's in Crimes of the Future, the new David Cronenberg
And that's
movie.
the only reason I'd see that movie.
Yep. And then
we were just talking about the underworlds on my good movies recently. So he came up.
Friend of the pod.
and James Franco was also considered. And then I
Thank
guess you got
God.
Harry.
I'm so mad he's even in this movie.
I
First of
know.
all.
I know. And then for MJ, Alicia Witt, Mina Safari, Eliza Dushku, and Elisha Cuthbert all auditioned. Kate Hudson and Tara Reid were considered, and Kate Hudson was a heavy favorite, but decided to do the Four Feathers instead.
Strong career choice.
I
We're
don't
all
think I
still
even
talking
know
about. I mean, the Four Feathers No Way Home just came out. It
Right.
was such a massive
Right?
success.
right.
It brought together all three quarters of the Four Feathers universe.
That is-
We're very excited
Exactly.
That is so weird. But you know what? Like, I think at that time, I mean, the only thing that had come out was really Blade and X-Men. So like,
Yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think it was kind of like thinking of comic books as one-offs, not seeing what it is now. So I can
Yes.
understand her saying, I want to be considered a serious actor.
I'm doing
And-
this period piece.
Right.
You essentially had like the Superman movies in the 80s,
Yeah.
the Batman movies in the 90s.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then Batman was such a massive hit in 89 that like, you know, other comic stuff started to happen, but for whatever reason, they didn't do like really popular characters with the kids of that era. They were
Yeah.
doing like 1930s serial characters. So
Yeah.
you get like Dick Tracy or the Phantom or the
Yeah.
Shadow, and they were all pretty much flops. And then Batman and Robin comes out, and it seems like, well, that's it for superhero movies. But then Blade comes out a year later and kind of changes the game in terms of like adapting this kind of material. And then X-Men is 2 years after that, and that really becomes like a big blockbuster hit,
Mhm.
which leads to Spider-Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the directors, David Fincher was asked to direct. He passed. And then Chris Columbus was also offered, but opted to make Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone instead.
That's a much better fit. Like, I just
Yeah.
can't even imagine what the tone would have been for this movie.
Yeah, a Chris Columbus Spider-Man. I don't know. I'm not.
But like in
seeing it.
2001, 2000, like it almost makes sense.
Almost,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, at that point, I think Harry Potter was like his first like big genre-y thing, I guess, with
Mhm.
fantasy and stuff. But like,
Yeah.
at that point, he was the Home Alone guy, you know?
Yeah,
He was,
exactly.
you know, and I guess he had written Gremlins and the Goonies, and so there's like that a little bit of that streak in him, which I think is present in Raimi's sensibility too. But I think he was so far removed from that at that point in time that it would just be weird if like Chris Columbus made a Spider-Man movie.
Oh man.
Well,
We're ready
let's
to
jump
dive
in. Let's jump into the movie. I'm sure y'all are way more familiar with this movie than I am. So anytime you want to steer this ship, go ahead and jump in.
This Titanic.
So we start with some voiceover.
Yeah, Tobey's voiceover.
And he says,
That's not me. That's me. Oh Jesus.
"Who am I? You
sure
sure
you
you
wanna
want to know?"
The story of my life isn't for the faint of heart.
Love it.
I feel like this is going in the direction of like, this is all hokey and dumb, but the hokiness is, I think, a very key part of like why this movie, I think, works so well. I love all of that stuff. I think what Sam Raimi brings to the table with this first Spider-Man movie in particular is he's really bringing that like 60s and 70s kind of comic vibes, the like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and then Stan Lee, John Romita Spider-Man comics. That was like his era of comics that he grew up with, which is weird because at this point in time, the Ultimate Spider-Man comics were coming out and they were like a more modern take on Spider-Man. But you had these movies coming out that were like a throwback to that sort of era that Sam Raimi grew up with. So it's like a weird dichotomy between the two. But as somebody who grew up more reading the Stan Lee stuff from the 60s and 70s, this fits that tone so perfectly, I think.
And the movie as a whole, I will say, like, it's very, I think it's pretty well written. It's well directed. Even the effects for the time, I'm on board. It's all the casting that I just hate.
Yes.
Like,
You
if
mean the
any-
clearly 30-year-old people
Yes.
in high
Yes.
school?
Yes.
I do not care for Tobey Maguire.
Not at
Danielle,
all.
close your ears. I don't care for Kirsten Dunst.
I love Kirsten Dunst, but not in this movie.
I mean,
Okay, so there was a part where my husband's just walking through the room while I'm watching it. And it was when MJ's like, maybe I need to take acting lessons. And he goes, yeah, you do for this movie. I just
Oh
kept
my God.
watching. And I was like,
harsh,
ooh.
harsh.
I don't understand because she's such a great actor. This is like what boggles my mind when you could see someone be so great in other pieces and then it was like, bitch, were you phoning it in? Were you tired? What happened?
No, it's because they like shoehorned her into the MJ role instead of finding someone that like embraced that Mary Jane spirit. They were just like, Kirsten Dunst makes a lot of money, like brings a lot of box office draw. Let's just throw her in there as MJ. And those wigs, they were terrible.
I wasn't sure if they like dyed her hair or wigs or whatever, but I was like, the amount of red hair dye in this movie that must have been the budget alone. Because James Franco had like a tint and it was just a hot mess.
I do want to take a minute to defend the casting here.
Okay.
I love Tobey and I love
You can
Kirsten in
try.
this movie.
Good luck.
I mean, to me, Tobey Maguire is, I think sort of a stroke of genius casting move because he was sort of an unexpected guy for the role partially at that time. Like some of the names you threw out there, like Scott Speedman, Leonardo DiCaprio, these are like people who like look like they could be like superheroes. And I think the idea of Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker being this kind of like disheveled nerd character, he is too old for the role. First off, I mean, 100%. But he's also like out of high school within the first half hour of the movie. Like they get through that stuff pretty quickly. But I think he really captures that like sense of like, he's just some kind of like meek, shy kid, not necessarily like super nerdy, like has, a friend in James Franco, has sort of a rapport with Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, but obviously she doesn't like see him that way. But at the same time, she kind of does. I mean, watching it again, actually, this past weekend, I was actually kind of struck by how much I really loved Kirsten Dunst's performance in this movie. And part of that may have just been like my crush on her that I had when I was 9 years old watching this. That may have been part of it for sure.
The nostalgias, Mike.
Yeah,
gonna
part of
call
it,
what it is.
But I think, what I like about Kirsten Dunst's performance in this movie is I feel like she brings a lot to it in terms of, being that girl next door, sort of the object for affection for Peter Parker. And that could be a very one-dimensional role. And to a degree it is. But I think what her performance does is she kind of shows you sort of the inner life of MJ to a certain degree that shows how she's like sort of playing into that role for appearance's sake. She's dating Flash Thompson, even though she kind of doesn't like him. She dates Harry, even though she kind of doesn't like him. And you kind of see that through her performance. And she's just trying to do what like society sort of expects her to do as the pretty girl, I guess. And then whenever she's talking to Peter, there's like a clear, like genuine sense of like, I feel the romance between the two of them. I feel the chemistry.
It's from a male lens. 100%. That is,
yeah.
Totally. I know it's like one dimensional, but like Peter, the way he watches her this whole time, it actually made me sad rewatching it because Peter does not know Mary Jane.
Mm-hmm.
He has been watching her, and every time he watches her, it's from the lens of how he feels about her and how it makes him feel. He never sees her. Like the whole movie, he does not see her. He sees what he wants to see, whether or not, like, so that makes me disappointed that that's who she ends up choosing, because she goes from fuckboy to fuckboy, and unfortunately Spider-Man is yet another fuckboy. Secondly,
it's the actual title of this episode.
Yes.
when it comes to Tobey Maguire, the thing that never like made sense to me was Spider-Man in the comic books was getting hosed left and right. Like, why?
He's pulling him down.
Why are we making it seem like he is? Yes, he was smart and a little off sometimes, but he was not like this nerd. Like, what was this choice? You could be nerdy and cute. Like, I don't understand. There was no appeal about him whatsoever. And he could not cry.
No, what is that tear from like the middle of his eye?
Visine eyes. He got the drops. These were not real. You're not even bringing real acting skills whatsoever. So
his
you're not
crying face looked like he was smiling.
Yeah,
like I was like, why are you smiling if you're sad? Uncle Ben just died. Like, be sadder. Like, pull from somewhere. And Peter Parker has a sense of joy to him.
Yep.
Like, he always has like those quips and is always, no matter what the situation is, no matter how dire it seems, he brings some levity to the situation. And Tobey Maguire was so
emo,
flat the entire time. I'm like, do you even care?
Do you have emotions? Well, I could just say this. Tobey Maguire wasn't giving me Queens. So that was another thing. As a New Yorker, this movie, I side-eyed a lot of things. One being when he told Uncle Ben he was going to the downtown library. Downtown where, bitch? That is the
main branch.
That's the New York library. Nobody calling that shit downtown. That's Midtown, bitch. What is this?
And then Uncle Ben drives him from deep out in Queens to Midtown. Yeah. And I guess they don't talk the whole hour and 20 minutes that would take. Because they wait till they pull up.
I know we normally go through the movie, but it's just like, it's Spider-Man. If you haven't fucking seen this movie, I will talk about some more shit that I've seen in this movie, because it just irritated me. The way that Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire read, I must be an angry teenager in this moment in the car. It was so bad. Like, Uncle Ben was just trying to be so kind and just said, but like when he said he was 63, it's so funny how different 63 looked then and how it looks now. I was like, bitch, look old.
Both him and Aunt May are ancient.
Yes.
I was like,
great,
they're pushing 70, but 63.
We've talked a lot about the casting of Tobey and Kirsten, but I think overall, I mean, aside from the James Franco of it all, I do think the casting of this movie is still very solid. I mean, you got J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, which is
he's great.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yes.
Unbelievable. There's a reason they brought him back at the MCU because like nobody else can play that character. There's a reason they didn't even try to cast him in the Andrew Garfield movies because they were like, we can't do anything. He's great. I love all the stuff that Daily Bugle with like that, like just very quick paced, sort of like 1940s screwball comedy-esque kind of thing going on. You have Bill Nunn and Elizabeth Banks and Ted Raimi all kind of in there as like the group there. That's a lot of fun, and Willem Dafoe is one of the great scenery chewing villains.
All hail Saint Willem.
Unbelievable.
Correct.
And to the degree where like he kind of gets the most focus in No Way Home when he comes back in the new one and he kills it again. I mean, he's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I do want to say that after No Way Home came out, everybody had like Willem Dafoe,
content
pictures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There was a picture of Willem Dafoe now, his age now, like recent, in like streetwear, urban wear. And I was like, hey.
No, Danielle. Danielle.
Just in this picture, for a moment, I had a Willem Dafoe. What the fuck is happening right now? It was
you had a thirst.
He had a swagger to him that I was very confused.
I can't.
Why is this happening? It's Willem Dafoe. He looks unhinged.
He's got a supreme confidence that you're just like, yeah, okay.
But I liked it. I had a moment and I am brave enough to share it. So thank you.
Thank you for opening up with us.
Yeah, but what does make this movie really work for me the most is honestly Sam Raimi's direction. And everything that kind of comes together with that. I mean, Sam Raimi, I think understands the character of Spider-Man more so than anybody else who's worked on them, except for perhaps the Spider-Verse people, the people who were into the Spider-Verse, which rules. But I think what Sam Raimi brings to the table is a sense of visual style that is, I think, extremely lacking in the last like 10 years of superhero blockbusters. I think there's a handful that I would say look pretty good, but Sam Raimi brings just such an energy to his camera and the way it moves around, and the epic Danny Elfman score that kicks in. And I think all the action sequences in all three of his movies are very good. And I think in this one especially, there are moments that have just stuck with me for years. This was like my gateway Sam Raimi movie because I'm a huge Sam Raimi fan. And, I saw the Evil Dead movies as a teenager, became obsessed with those. And then I kind of dug back into his filmography and pretty much watched everything. But this movie has that one moment where the Goblin throws his pumpkin bomb and hits the Oscorp executives, and they all turn into skeletons, and then they all turn into dust.
Yes.
And like that moment scarred me as a child.
When I don't remember,
stuck with me.
I didn't remember that scene. So when I saw it again, the holler laugh that came out when I rewatched it, I was like,
was someone in a wheelchair?
Yes.
I was like, oh, look at it. Because my brain went, is that a wheelchair? Oh, they're being inclusive. Oh, they're all skeletons. Like it was just rapid fire, like just single thoughts in my brain during that scene.
But the important thing is Macy Gray survived.
Yeah, right? Macy Gray was fine.
Yes, they should have brought her back in No Way Home, actually.
Exactly.
I was just like, why is he throwing Pokemon balls out like that? That's all I kept thinking. And when we talk about inclusivity, I do have to say, you are filming in Queens, in New York City. I don't see anything that I would see in Queens. No Black, no Asian, no Hispanic, really. It was just like white. And
if they're there, they're like background extras. For
that's the fakeness of diversity in the background. But like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, the teacher was Black. And the teacher looked younger than fucking Flash. Who casted him as a high school student?
Yeah, Joe Manganiello. Did I say it right?
Manganiello, I think.
Manganiello as Flash Thompson.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to fight him neither.
That whole fight scene in the school where Flash is pissed.
Yeah.
Cinematic masterpiece. Yeah.
So good.
I'm just like, this is going on way too long because it's all in slow-mo, how Peter's perceiving it. I'm like, do we have to bend over backwards again, Peter? Can we just be done with this scene?
Okay, so can we talk about what made them decide for this version of Spider-Man to have his webs to like be shooting out of his body like that?
I can answer this actually. So there's actually a reason behind this, because obviously in the comics he has like mechanical web shooters, and in this movie he doesn't. It's organic webs that come out of his body. The reason being the military got involved. And didn't want they like actually like contacted Sony and the filmmakers and stuff and told them that they couldn't do mechanical web shooters because they didn't want the implication that a teenager could create better technology than the military could, essentially.
What kind of bullshit?
Because they make the Goblin glider thing.
They also do the Goblin glider thing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they didn't want, the idea that like some kid in Queens or whatever could create like, this incredible web slinging technology and stuff. Meanwhile, the military like can't come up with that or whatever it was. Like the military got involved and kind of shut that down. And so they had to rewrite the movie in order to make it organic web shooters.
I love in No Way Home where they kind of like call him out on that, and they're like,
on that, yeah.
Do you run out? Like, how do you make it?
Yeah. But I always kind of like the organic shooters just as like, an extra Spider-Man power that this movie throws in there.
It makes me think he's skizzing all over the place.
That's a definitive, that's definitely an aspect of Spider-Man that you can like read into throughout the entire history.
Specifically that scene when Aunt May's like, "Oh, you're acting very strange," and then he turns around and this room is covered in webs. Yeah, covered in webs. Quotes.
Exactly the kind of joke that Sam Raimi would do. Also.
Absolutely.
But it's always been like a metaphor for like going through puberty, and so that's an aspect of it.
Which would make more sense if he was a 30-year-old man. Like
there's a weird like body horror aspect to this, because I don't know in the comics like how they ever explain like why Spider-Man can climb walls and stuff, but in this I guess he's just covered in spider legs, right? Like they show that one close up.
I literally wrote, I hate the hairy finger barbs, like the extreme close up of them coming out of his skin and just being little barbs. No, thank you. I did not need that in my life. And also in that scene, or later on in that scene, when he's kind of testing out his web shooter and then he finally like hits the crane. Mm-hmm. So Peter is a smart kid and his first instinct is, let me put my whole body weight on this web that I'm just shot out of my body and jump off the roof of a building and hope that it like doesn't break.
I mean, he's a smart kid, but he's still a kid.
Because he's a 30-year-old man.
Yeah. It does seem worse that way. Yeah. I mean, he is old for the part for sure. But again, he's out of high school within the first half hour. So I feel like they know. The movie knows that I think he and all the high school kids are way too old for it and skip the high school stuff pretty quick.
But
they get through it.
What I loved Spider-Man being in high school. And I think I like the other movies that the last group of movies that they try to, they're in high school for the 3 movies. I love that. Yeah. Because they, I hated that they try to just skate by so fast into him being an adult, because those are some of the fun storylines of Spider-Man, like balancing, his life. And so I was just like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, and I think the balance of Spider-Man's life kind of plays more into Spider-Man 2, which is why it's the greatest movie ever made. But also, I think the stuff that Raimi is drawing from with this movie specifically, and screenwriter David Coe, I should credit him as well. They're drawing from those 60s Spider-Man comics, and if you actually read those, like he's out of high school within the first 30 issues, and he's like in college for the rest of it. Like I have it. I mentioned this in the podcast every once in a while, but I have a Marvel Unlimited subscription, and I've been trying to just read everything from the beginning, which will take me my entire life. It's basically impossible to do, but I'm right now somewhere in the middle of like 1975. I've read like 150 Spider-Man comics, and he's still in college, but he's been in college for like 120 of those issues. And the Ultimate Spider-Man comics are the ones where they actually like spend a lot of time with him in high school. Like that's like, and so that's the stuff where it was like Spider-Man being a high school student, I think kind of became a thing around this time through the comics. And then, they kind of start to lift from that, especially with the Andrew Garfield ones, and then obviously much more with the Tom Holland ones.
Yeah. Which, I mean, even if they had focused on them being in college, they didn't seem like they were in school at all either. Like they said they were going to be in college, but it just seemed like they were all just in their 20s working and stuff. Like it just felt like disconnected.
Also much more of a thing in Spider-Man 2 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie really, if you think about it, is kind of like a utopian artifact of when young people are potentially 18 or 19 could like live in Manhattan and like have work a freelance photography job.
Yeah.
Oh, like granted, I guess what's his name's Norman Osborn is paying for that.
I was gonna say, if your best friend happens to be the head of a major corporation,
Right?
then, like,
Yeah, it's true.
It's a little bit easier.
That's not. You're right. Yeah, good
And
point.
how much are these two best friends? Like, let's talk about it, because we see in the beginning that Peter is obsessed with Mary Jane living next door to him or whatever.
Right.
And I think it's weird that they've lived next door. I would have loved it more if they had like a friendship. She was friend zoning him, but they had a friendship. But in the beginning of the movie, it just seems as if she doesn't even know he exists. And I'm like, bitch, he sees your daddy yelling at you every night. You know he exists. Like,
It's
what
very
is
strange.
this? Yeah. So
I think that plays into like her kind of trying to act the role of like, being the popular girl or whatever. But I think she's the one who gets him to stop the bus to allow him on the bus.
yeah.
That's true.
So there's that.
But he, like, they just the way that they engage, she does like try to stick up for him, but it would have been cooler if it was like everyone kind of knew that Mary Jane knew him, like they're neighbors and they've known each other forever. It was just kind of disconnected. So by the time we get to the end of the movie, she's like, I love you. I was like, bitch, when? Like, I was very confused with that.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to Harry, he begrudgingly goes to the school because he's the rich kid, and he tries to like cool it down because he doesn't want them to make fun of him, and he's cool with Peter. But he knows Peter has loved Mary Jane forever. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna go for it though, bruh. And then he hides the relationship when he finally gets her, and then acts weird or upset when she chooses it. I'm like, you did a bitch ass thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and
Harry's a shitty friend. Like,
he's like literally steal Peter's lines from him at the field trip where it's like Peter's like, here's this fun fact about spiders, and then Harry's like, hey MJ, want to hear a fun fact about spiders?
Yeah.
It's like, dude,
I do that. It's very funny where he's like, who would want to know that? And then he goes up to her and says the exact same thing.
Yeah. And like it kind of works. It's very funny.
And she's like, oh, no, thank you.
I do like the only moment that showed that like Mary Jane had some sense about her was when she was the one who counted that the spiders were not right. Like there's one missing. And I was like, okay, I there's a glimmer.
I do love just like how I guess like YOLO Peter Parker is, where they're literally at a spider thing where we just mentioned one's missing and he gets bit by a spider and he's just like, I'm not going to mention it.
Man, it's
like,
fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
What are the odds that it's the missing spider?
What could go wrong?
That spider is literally bright blue and bright red, which apparently they hand painted. They put the spider under anesthesia. It was a real spider, and they hand painted him for his scene in this movie.
Paid actor of the spider.
I hope
Part
he
of the
gets
Screen Actors
royalties.
Guild. The spider,
right?
Spider
The real SAG.
But I do love that. I mean, I do love that scene and the way they visualize that too, where then it's just, Peter kind of having these like weird nightmare visions.
Oh, yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And, I think one of the things that bugs me about the other, like the Andrew Garfield ones, I think do a really poor job of telling the origin of Spider-Man. And then the Tom Holland ones just skip it entirely.
Yeah.
Which I think was praised by some people at the time. I always felt like that was kind of a cheat a little bit, where it was like, I feel like we need to have some like element of tragic backstory in Spider-Man's life in order to like understand like what he's doing, what's going on. And so I think this one is the one that like really kind of gets the origin right. And it's like set the template for the rest of them.
But I think because they did it so well in this one, and what I think happened with the second Andrew Garfield movie was that it was so heavily compared to the first Tobey McGuire movies that it didn't have a chance to breathe. So I think that's why they changed so many elements in the newer ones. Like, and the same thing with this new Batman. One of the reasons I love the new Batman was that I did not have to go through this shit again. Daddy and mommy get shot up in the corner. Like
I did like the fake out of the Batman where it seems like you're about to see it again at the beginning, and it turns out it's a different family that's getting shot.
Yeah, because at this point we've seen it. Like you said, these comic book characters have been around since the 60s. Let's pull some new stories. We know who Spider-Man is at this point. I don't need to see Uncle Ben die again. That shit is traumatic already.
Sure. Yes.
So
Well, maybe
I think it
not
just needs to
in
be,
the
like,
Amazing
acknowledging.
Spider-Man.
Yeah. Over.
Uncle Ben dies because of chocolate milk in the Amazing Spider.
So let's talk about this scene. That's my background. Where
Oh.
Yeah.
so Peter comes up with a plan because he sees MJ is very impressed with the Flash's new car. What kind of car is it, Danielle?
Is it
A
I think it's a Corvette.
I don't
No,
know.
it's like a PC Cruiser kind of looking thing.
It's
Is
a
it a
Plymouth
Jetta?
Prowler.
I don't know. Was it black?
It was silver.
Silver? Okay. That's the question you should ask. What color was it?
So like MJ, I think just she wants so desperately to be out of her lot in life. And that's kind of why she goes after these rich himbo guys. And so Peter's like, well, I guess I need a nicer car than Uncle Ben's Oldsmobile, which apparently is the same Oldsmobile Sam
It's the
Raimi
classic.
uses in all of his movies.
Yes,
course.
it's
Every
Ash's
movie.
car from the Evil Dead movies. You can recently see it in Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, kind of floating in the air at one point.
So Peter sees this ad and it's like, earn $3,000 if you can last 3 minutes in a ring with Bonesaw. Is that his name?
Bonesaw, played
Oh,
by Macho Man Randy Savage.
Snap into a Slim Jim.
can we
Yes,
talk
tell
about
us.
this scene where Peter is like daydreaming about, like he's adding up MJ plus car plus this will mean I have MJ. Like, can we talk about that? Because I looked down for a second, I swear, and I looked up and I was like, what the fuck is this?
I
It's a
just
thought
like,
process.
I
That's what I'm
was
thinking
just,
about right now.
I was just in wonderment of all of the prices of the cars
Yes. Yes.
at
mean,
that
he's-
time. It's like $4,000 for like a Renault. And I'm like, in what world?
It's a
Yes,
utopian
in
movie,
this
like I said.
Spider-Verse. Like it was crazy. But yeah, so that was his major plan. Money equals car equals MJ.
Right.
That was the equation in his head.
Step
so
forward
he-
profit.
Exactly. So he goes to this like underground wrestling situation.
Yeah.
We
Where
see
Octavia
him-
Spencer is there.
Yes. So Peter has lots of sketches about his uniform, his suit, and then comes out in
pajamas.
sweatpants, spray painted with a spider on it,
Yeah.
and a balaclava to cover his face. Like,
Yes.
what are we doing here?
I think it's realistically what a high school student could put together on short notice for this kind of thing.
That is
You know?
fair. But his sketches did not represent, like, if he was that artistic in his sketches, I feel like
He's a
He
really
would have
good
been-
artist.
he
He draws the
was.
perfect Spider-Man.
exactly.
It's like he's read the comics before.
And so we see Bonesaw throwing people out of the ring. No one's lasting more than like a couple of seconds. And then Peter goes into the ring and they pull down the cage.
Yes.
Why?
Cage
Why
match.
is he the cage match?
I think it was randomly selected. I think it was one of those things where it's like, a cage match is coming down, whatever it is. But also, I think people just wanted to see this kid get destroyed by Bonesaw. And also, Bruce Campbell's there and absolutely
Yeah.
killing it as the
And
ring
names him.
announcer.
Which
Yes.
because I have never okay, disclosure. I've never seen the Evil Dead movies.
Oh,
I'm
man.
sorry.
Just watch
Um,
these movies. They're great.
So my comment on Bruce Campbell being there is, oh, look, it's Coach Boomer, because that's who he played in Sky High.
Wow.
I mean, hey, that's that's a reference point also, you know.
Yeah.
Did Sam,
Another
for sure.
superhero movie.
did Sam
Yes.
Raimi have anything to do with like the Xena show or
Yes.
Hercules?
Raimi produced both of those shows.
Okay, that made all the cameos make sense.
Yeah, because
now.
Lucy Lawless pops up in this too.
Yes,
also.
yes, and
Guy
I
with
was
6
like,
hands,
that
huh?
makes
Sounds
sense
hot.
to me.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, so
How did I
looked-
never realize that's Lucy Lawless? Wait a second.
I mean, she's got like the punk kind of look going on. It's
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
than what she usually looks like. Yeah.
So,
But she was also in the Ash vs. the Dead TV show as well. a couple
Yeah.
years ago.
oh, that's right.
Yeah, I love that. This whole scene, the whole like Bruce Campbell being the one to give him the name, like human spider, that sucks.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not my name.
Just gets pushed out there, and it's actually, I mean, if you look at the special features behind the scenes, it's actually like Sam Raimi like throwing popcorn and shit at Spider-Man. Which it's funny, like watching some of because a lot of the fun that you see in the behind the scenes, like Sam Raimi really loved to torture Tobey McGuire just by hitting him with stuff off screen.
I like that.
So when you see like in Spider-Man 2, there's like the scene where he drops his book and you see like Sam Raimi just like whack him with a backpack. Yeah. And it's pretty incredible. But he's like, throwing popcorn and stuff at him in this scene. It's pretty fun.
I feel like he deserved every second of it. I wonder while he was shooting this movie is if he was like doing those backroom poker.
That's possible. The stuff
Molly's
that was in
game style.
Yeah, which I don't know if Mike knows what we're talking about. Do you know what we're talking about?
I remember Molly's Game.
Okay, yeah. Michael Cera is like the Tobey McGuire analog in Molly's Game.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Who like shuts down the entire thing.
Amazing. Yeah, there's the only like one like problematic like homophobic joke in this scene that's like, man, if that wasn't in this is a 10 out of 10 moment. But I guess
it does not pass the Bechdel test. I can tell you that much.
Who the fuck is Mary Jane talking to?
Aunt May?
The two women in New York. Yeah.
I think
Lucy
they say something
Lawless.
like pass the turkey or something.
Now Peter's kind of honed his craft. And in this scene, it sets the catalyst for the rest of the movie. So Peter's only paid $100 because he knocked out Bonesaw in 2 minutes instead of 3.
Yeah, so the ring guy shafts him basically.
Yes, exactly.
He should have read the rules.
Should just hang up on the ceiling for like another minute,
Exactly.
Just like web snatch that stack of bills out of his hand.
Right.
Like
I would have taken it.
Yeah. So then the guy is just like robbed at his desk in his establishment. That robber was pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's like a bunch of other people in that room.
Specific.
Yes.
But
Peter is salty because he only got $100, so he's like, "Not my problem. Sorry about it."
And then this line is the only like the times when Peter is like being sassy, and we see it in the third movie. Those are the only times that I see glimmers of light in his eyes as an actor.
Yeah,
I'm just
the little smirk he's got when he says it.
Yes, and I think what I like about this scene too is I feel like Peter is like totally justified in letting the guy go after the guy like
100%
shafted him, and then it like backfires on Peter so hard because obviously Uncle Ben dies right afterwards, and I think that is like the ultimate like obviously the catchphrase of the movie, with great power comes great responsibility. Like I feel like it drives that point home so well because like anybody who watches that scene would be like, yeah, Peter was in the right, like like shitty that guy got robbed, but like also he was just really shitty to Peter. So like, kind of evens out. And then, because Peter responded like I think a normal person would respond, Uncle Ben pays for it, which is kind of crazy.
Why would this is one thing we didn't discuss. Peter has been the nerdiest nerd of all nerds for his whole life. And I'm sure Uncle Ben and Aunt May have had to go to school to pick him up because he's gotten his ass beat time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me your boy been acting weird all of a sudden, and now he got in trouble for kicking the ass of his oppressors, and now you want to roll up to the downtown library and tell me, my nerdy ass, with great power comes great responsibility. What fucking great power, Uncle Ben? I've been getting my ass beat for years.
I just found this power.
Right.
I mean, I think Uncle Ben is trying to tell him that, he tells him like, these are the years that a man becomes the man he's going to be and all that kind of stuff. But I think part of that is like, he's seeing a change in Peter and he doesn't really know what. He's just trying to like, kind of cover all his bases, I think, by saying something like that. And obviously it kind of Peter takes it to heart. But yeah, he really like, Peter was a pretty good kid and he would help them paint the kitchen once upon a time, but now he's not, kind of thing. And I really like the like kind of inner life stuff you get with Uncle Ben and Aunt May in that first half hour too, where you find out like Uncle Ben's been laid off from his job and he's like looking through the paper trying to find something, but he's old now. It's like it's not likely that he's gonna get another job.
Computer salesman.
Even the computers need analysts these days. You know, you get the sense. I mean, I think both. It's because Cliff Robertson and Rosemary Harris are both terrific actors. It feels like a very lived-in relationship.
Yeah,
which I like.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to shout out to my mom for telling me not to take shit from nobody. And if I got in trouble for beating ass, she would not be lecturing me about bullshit. Thank you, mommy, because ridiculous. Peter deserved to beat their ass. And the fact that everyone was looking at him weird don't make no sense to me.
I think because it was such a weird change from the Peter Parker they thought they knew kind of thing is part of it too.
Yeah.
Also because he's doing backflips and shit all of a sudden.
Yeah. Catching all the food on the tray. Like, why was hilarious. MJ not side-eyeing?
They did that for real though, which is the fucked up part.
Yeah, that is.
Yes.
Yeah. It only took like over 100 takes.
Yeah, but they did it.
They got it.
It's like a dance.
So meanwhile, while Peter is honing his craft at the underground wrestling,
I thought you were going to say Underground Railroad.
That's a different movie. Norman Osborn, who is Harry's father, is a mad scientist, if you will, and is experimenting on himself.
He's going through a metamorphosis himself.
He is.
Which I do love the parallels between the two of them, both going through very big changes and just how differently they handle these new powers.
Yes. But my question, when Norman's in that clean room getting gassed, why is the clean room so giant? You could use less product if that room was smaller.
But you see, big smoke is cool. So
right, exactly. Yeah.
And it's like odd angles.
They needed it to be big so that they could have that scene where the guy gets his ass like beaten in that room with him.
He gets killed. He's murdered, Danielle.
Right. Semantics.
Willem Dafoe like breaks the glass, jumps up, does like and does his thing. It's great.
Yeah.
And I love that how they show the difference between like Norman and the Green Goblin is just to give him regular teeth.
Yeah.
And then the Green Goblin teeth are his actual teeth.
Yep.
They're so the bad guy teeth.
I love the scene in the mirror. I could say I could shit on a lot of stuff in this movie, but that scene alone was just impeccable acting and direction.
Willem Dafoe
and
acting
everything.
against himself.
Yeah.
So fun. And I was actually thinking about it watching it this time too, where I was like, it's kind of weird that this came out the same year as Two Towers, which has a similar scene where it's Gollum and Smeagol arguing against themselves. And it's even the same kind of thing where the camera angles like kind of flipping back and forth to show the different personalities kind of attacking each other kind of thing, which I thought was cool. But I was also thinking to myself, like right before he talks to the mirror, part of that scene is just him talking to a chair with a mask on it.
Yes.
And I was thinking to myself, like, they shot this and it's just a chair with a mask on it. Like they just shot a chair for like a minute.
Yeah.
And there's like no other camera movement to it, but because you have Willem Dafoe's voiceover like added onto it, it feels very dynamic and sinister.
Yes.
But it's just a chair.
He has to be one of the best, I would say, comic book villains on screen ever. The thing is, it's not even the character or the powers, it's him as an actor.
Yeah.
And it's just, I was surprised how immersed I was in his character rewatching the movie.
Yeah. He also did over 90% of his stunts. He did almost all of his own stunts. And then that Green Goblin costume, it was composed of 580 pieces and took a half an hour to put on.
Jesus.
Every day.
Shit.
Yeah. But these days they would just CGI the entire thing and it wouldn't look as good,
Yeah.
Not that the costume even looks particularly good, but it's like fun because Willem Dafoe's in it,
So how did they do the costume in the new movie?
They didn't really, they gave him like a hood.
In sweatpants a lot.
He's like sweatpants and a hood in the new movie. He's like not even wearing a mask.
He doesn't get his costume ever
at the very end.
Shows up. I think when he first shows up, he has like his traditional, like the old school costume, but he like abandons it pretty quick. He smashes the mask. I rewatched No Way Home pretty recently.
When he's with Aunt May, that whole scene in the apartment.
I think he just has the glider on, or like he's using the glider, but he's not in full
He's just
costume.
in sweatpants. It's kind of lame.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dafoe's killing it, but he's just like, he's just in sweatpants, and it was also kind of bummed that they didn't do practical tentacles for Doc Ock in the new movie too, like they did in Spider-Man 2, because that would have been cool.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts that Marvel has basically been chasing this villain for the last 20 years. Like that's notoriously been their thing. To the point they just brought him back. They're like, please.
I think the MCU largely has a pretty big villain problem where like a lot of them are pretty unmemorable. And you look back at this one and like really, I think all three of these movies, with the exception of Topher Grace's Venom, who I think is pretty actively bad in Spider-Man 3. But I think you have Dafoe in this movie, Alfred Molina in Spider-Man 2, and Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman in Spider-Man 3. I think all deliver like really compelling performances and are very memorable in them.
That's why Topher Grace didn't get asked back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have a new Venom now. We have Tom Hardy, and those movies are bad, but he's great in them. So it's like it balances out.
So very quickly after like Peter, well, I guess so they show graduating to show that time has passed after Ben has died. Like it's just like, okay, I'm graduating, I'm grown. Moves to New York with Harry. Norman, that's his name, right? Norman.
Yep.
Norman's bankrolling them.
Yep.
And Peter has a job, but he's fired because he's late all the time. Like you literally can swing to work. Like, how are you late, Peter?
He was the last time he was late was because he was trying to holla at MJ, knowing, I think in this scene he finds out that MJ is with his boy, his fucking roommate. You can't even have the like cojones to tell me where are y'all fucking, because it's not in this house.
And Danielle, did you recognize the diner she walks out of, the Moonlight Diner?
Yes.
Tick Tick Boom. And also from real life, but it was in Tick Tick Boom.
It was in Tick Tick Boom, but also it was where Monica worked on Friends.
But also it's in New York. So
well, yeah. I don't live in New York. I never lived in New York, and I just know it's where she met.
I didn't know when you asked the question. I didn't know you were going to reference something. I just thought you were like, "Oh, did you see that in New York?" And I was like, "Yes." And then you were continuing, so I was like, "What's happening right now?" And
that diner's not there anymore, right?
And then I panicked because I was like, "Is this a special Jackie Danielle place that I forgot? Did we go there?" So I had a lot of emotions.
Did we have a big friendship moment?
I was like, oh, fuck. I got real nervous, like a husband forgetting the anniversary. But yes.
Did we meet for the first time at this diner?
But I could bring it around to the MCU because that's where she meets Pete, played by Jon Favreau. Is at the Moonlight Diner.
Full circle moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
In Friends.
In Friends. Yes. Okay. I got you now. I was
like, trying to follow along there.
There's too many Pete's.
Keep up.
So now it's some weird parade. They have a Rastafarian like balloon. I don't, and Macy Gray's performing, like we said, and
which rules should have brought her back for No Way Home. I really would have loved the reveal that Macy Gray knew who Peter Parker was the whole time, and that's why she got
100%. The whole thing about the military base, so that suit that the military was trialing, not great, pretty cumbersome,
right?
But
is it shut it down?
But that's the people they want to go with,
right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
The general, I think, has like a personal grudge against Norman because he says,
I
like,
think
nothing
so
would make me happier to put Norman, like put Oscorp out of business or whatever.
Yes.
But no context after that. No. Not like he stole my girl in college. Nothing. Like
I don't think we even need it. We know Norman's a dick, so like that would make sense. He has
a crazy
enemies. Yeah.
So why did Norman blow that up? Was he trying to steal that tech? Did he have his own tech?
He's eliminating the competition because he wants them to go after, to use their stuff because
But did they develop a suit? They developed the weird
green
gas.
The
serum that they're after. The serum, right? So were they trying to make the super soldier serum or something equivalent?
It's possible. I mean, I don't think they could probably legally say anything like that at this point in time in
Yeah.
2002. So it's possible they were trying to go for something like that, but I think it may have just been more just like, you know, superpowered suit. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
I kind of
Yeah.
love that sort of aspect about this movie too, like the way it sort of fits into the like we were talking about before, kind of spawning MCU and all those kind of stuff. Because there's like Easter eggs in this movie that it's when like Easter eggs were Easter eggs and not hints at sequels. Because there's a moment at the
Right.
beginning, towards the beginning, when they're in the Daily Bugle's office and Bill Nunn is like, "Oh yeah, we got Brock trying to take pictures of it." And he's like, he's talking
Yeah.
about Eddie Brock, and that's just
Yes.
like a fun thing if you have read the comics.
Right.
Right. And
But-
then he gets hired in Spider-Man 3. So when
Yeah.
you see this movie, it's like, what? Eddie
Right.
works there
Yeah.
already? What?
Wait a second. But yeah, and then so like I sort of feel like the like whatever super soldier theorem or whatever they're working on, the performance enhancers or whatever they call
Yeah.
them in this. It's kind of like wink wink at that stuff. I think at this point in the movie, he's already like obviously full Green Goblin. He's already killed the
Mhm.
lab assistant dude. He kills the general in this, so I think he's just gone psychopath by this point, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's soon thereafter that the board votes him out and essentially fires him, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
And
really
then-
because he eliminated that stuff, they are going to go with Oscorp, I think. But Oscorp's
Yeah.
board is like, this guy's a liability. We need to get rid of him.
Yeah. And so then that's when he full goes Green Goblin, like
Yeah. You know how much I sacrificed?
Wow, it's like he was here with us on the Zoom.
it is. Willem Dafoe, are you here with us?
Papa
Papa,
Dafoe.
can you hear me? I do want to say that it was hard watching the movie because the sets, all I could think about was the Spider-Man ride in Universal.
Yep.
Great
Every
ride.
time I saw like an aerial shot or anything, I was like,
Yeah.
I just felt like this
Yeah.
Yeah.
because that's what the Spider-Man ride is.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
weird the things that like stick with you when you see a movie when you're a certain age,
Right.
not to give it away.
Undisclosed age.
Yeah, an undisclosed age.
You?
The one shot at like the World Unity Day thing when everything's already happening and Spider-Man shows up, right? And he like bounces on the kangaroo balloon. That one for 20 years. I don't know why. That has stuck out to me a lot. And I just wanted everybody to know that. Thank you.
Well,
I
this
appreciate
is a safe
that.
space. We
Yes,
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Yes. One of the things that have stuck out to me also is when like the Green Goblin and Spider like has like captured Spider-Man and he kind of just like leans against the wall and is like, we're not so different, you and I. Just being real casual with him.
I'm something of a super person myself.
It makes me laugh like all the things that are memes now from this movie, and it's just like, but when like in the beginning when Peter gets bit, I was just like, yo, he had COVID, dog, because that is what I
Those are
look
some rough
like.
symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was what I looked like when I had COVID. Like when he just like walked up the stairs and pulled that blanket and was like,
Missed
"Is
the
this a
bed.
wrap?"
Yeah.
And when he like walks in, he's like, I have to go lay down. And they're like, do you want food? He's like, I need to lay down. Like he was just like, goodbye, everyone.
Yes.
I'm
Goodbye,
dead.
cruel world. But okay, so what movie is this? A Mandela effect? Who got bit on the neck by a spider?
Bit on the neck.
I
Maybe Andrew
s-
Garfield.
You know what? I thought
think-
I thought about that too. I was like, oh, he's gonna get bit in the neck, and then it was
Yeah.
on his hand, and I was like, what's
Yeah,
that?
that
That was-
might be the Garfield movie.
Okay.
The Andrew Garfield movie, not the Garfield the cat movie.
He got
As far as I
bit
know-
while eating lasagna.
Yes. Yeah, that might be the Amazing Spider-Man. It might also, you might be thinking the Spider-Verse. Maybe Spider-Verse is on the arm too, actually. I'm not sure.
I have a vivid memory, and I've only I did watch Amazing Spider-Man recently, but it was for the first time, and this feels more ingrained.
I've
Mm.
never
Okay.
seen
The
it.
Garfield
fair.
one's
But I have a vivid memory of the spider dropping down, biting him on the neck, and then him like reaching
Going, like,
back the next
yeah.
day, and webs are on his hand.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, that might be the Amazing Spider-Man. It could also be, there was, after this movie came out,
Mhm.
there was, you know how the MTV Movie Awards used to do like
yeah.
parodies? I remember Jack Black hosted that year, and I believe there was a Spider-Man parody, and it might have
Okay.
been that.
Well, I don't know where it came from, but it is deeply rooted in my memory, much like bouncing off the kangaroo balloon for Mike.
Was there a reggae like a
Yes, a
okay.
Rastafarian balloon.
Yeah, I was like,
With
what the
dreads.
fuck is this?
Yeah, I mean this parade, it's weird because like this movie takes place around Thanksgiving. They could have done the Thanksgiving Day parade.
I don't think they had the legal rights to do it.
Probably not. Yeah. So
But
they
it
did
also
the World Unity Day. They kind of make up a holiday like where it's, you know, several different cultures, I think, you know, expressing their own.
But it also gave me vibes of 1989 Batman.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it also gave me vibes of Detective Pikachu, where they had all the Pokemon balloons.
Yeah,
like it was
God.
just like a weird balloons type situation.
Right.
I
And more
don't know.
movies should be about weird balloons, you know?
They should.
When you get down to it, yeah.
Because I enjoy both of those movies a lot. So during the World Unity Day is when Green Goblin kind of makes his debut
Yes.
and fucks shit up. MJ, of course, is always in peril. And I guess Kirsten Dunst did say that like she annoyed herself with how much like screaming and just damsel in distress
She's
there
very
was.
much damsel in distress in I think all three of these movies. I'm trying to think
Yeah,
about three, but I'm
it's-
pretty sure, yeah. Which is kind of a factor in all the Spider-Mans. I think Zendaya gets more to do as like a more dynamic character in the MCU stuff. But yeah, you know, that's also there's a degree of that in her character in those movies too. I mean, you have the sequence in No Way. Everybody's seen No Way Home, I'm guessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You have the scene where she falls down the thing, and Andrew Garfield's the one who has to save her and all that kind of stuff. But she definitely has more. She's a more active member of like the Spider team.
Yes, she's attempting to help.
Yes.
She's throwing rolls at people. And Ned's grandma's house.
Yes.
That's one of the reasons why I loved the Blade movie so much, was because the female character in that movie, like she had to get saved, but she had no powers. She got thrown into this world and she was able to just like take care of herself and figure shit out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I love when I can see roles like that, because women would never just like lay in the corner and cry. Yeah, like
You
I
don't
can't
just,
depend
like,
on no man for shit.
Yes.
I
just
gotta
become a wet
live.
noodle.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially in like blockbusters, really throughout all of history of film, but like really in this era, that's a lot of women's roles in this.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Insert
Kimberly from the Power Rangers.
no. Insert Reese Witherspoon's one of her award acceptance speeches that she has, where she's like, there's all these roles that she kept getting where she would read and a woman would say, what do we do now, to a man? And she's like, no fucking woman ever in life has ever said, what do we do now? Every woman has a goddamn plan.
Yeah.
And it's facts.
Mhm.
I
got plans A, B, C, D, and E.
You're ready to go.
yeah.
I'm always ready.
Yes.
I got
So-
scissors right here. Just in case. I stay ready.
So shortly after this is when we see Peter talking to MJ, and they have this really weird conversation. Like she invites him to go out with her and Harry, and he's like, no. But then she's like, it's very much like,
Yeah, like you could tell he wants to, and I think she wants him to also, but he knows like he's still Harry's friend. Harry's been a dick to him, but he also feels like a third wheel.
yeah.
There's a lot of like complicated stuff happening.
He's
there,
like,
I
bitch,
think.
I'm not gonna sit and watch you with my friend have a
Right.
fucking meal. Like,
Yeah.
get out of here with that shit.
Yeah, but it's also clear, like it's clear in that scene, MJ would be so much happier with Peter too, or at least she would be happier with the idea of trying to date Peter instead of Harry.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like it's a preferable alternative.
Almost like she doesn't want to be alone with Harry, which I kind of feel
Well-
might be appropriate.
I think that's more hindsight talking than it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to know how she didn't figure out like immediately that Spider-Man was Peter once she kissed him. Those were the thinnest lips on the
Yeah.
East Coast.
She's got that moment of recollection though.
Yeah, when
Yes.
she kisses him again, but I could spot those lips a mile away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He has a very distinctive mouth.
Yeah, it's like as an artiste, I was drawing lips, I would just put two straight lines.
Or just one straight line.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
It's true.
One
Yeah.
straight line that just
Yeah.
separates.
I mean, I think that is like, that's also just an aspect of superhero stuff you have to roll with almost. Like, the love interest doesn't figure out who they are for a very long time in almost everything.
I think
Yeah,
with Lois Lane doesn't figure out who Superman is until like Superman reveals himself kind of thing. And it's
I
like he
get
just
it,
put on
but I just
glasses.
had to make fun of Tobey Maguire's lips.
And that's
There's a-
fair.
Well-
Yes, very make funnable lips.
And the way she pulls his mask down, like she literally covers his nostrils. So homeboy is like suffocating
He can't
because
breathe.
he's kissing with his mouth and he can't breathe through his nose. And he's upside down. And Tobey Maguire said his sinuses kept filling up with water because he was upside down. Homeboy was being waterboarded while
Yeah.
kissing this girl.
And she
at
couldn't
the
find
same
his
time-
lips. She was making out with his chin.
men will
And he-
literally get waterboarded to kiss a woman instead of going to
Yeah.
therapy.
And yet at the same time, that image, the upside down kiss, has been like the resonating image from this movie.
I think it's the DVD cover, if I remember right.
It might be, or like at least maybe
One
like
of
the
them.
inside cover. or
Yeah,
whatever.
And
something
for
like
the
that.
girlies, we just remember Seth and Summer recreating this
Mhm.
on the OC.
We do.
Sure.
And
That
that's
was a much better-
kiss.
Yeah.
Wow. That feels
We
like a hot
prefer
take.
that version.
Yes. Highly prefer that version.
But this to me feels like one of those things where like a lot of modern superhero stories are trying to chase like any moment that's like half as like resonant within pop culture as the
Yes.
upside down kiss in Spider-Man, because it is one of those things where it's like it's the perfect like it's Spider-Man and MJ, it's that classic couple, but it's also he's upside down. It's like
Imagery.
the imagery
yeah.
that like evokes Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think like in the Tom Holland movies, I don't think there's a single moment in there that like makes me like think of Spider-Man the way this image does, I guess.
No, not at all.
There's such a weird like for the tone or whatever of this movie, as like hokey as it might be, there's such like a weird earnestness to this movie compared to the stuff in the MCU, I think, or like modern day superhero movies in
Yeah.
general
Yeah.
that are so like Joss Whedon snark. Everything is ironic or dark, like gritty, like
Right.
fucking Joker or whatever that movie is. But you know what I'm saying.
Joker
or
Part 2 coming out
Part
soon.
two. But in this movie, like it's going for kind of like the grand romance with a capital R of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether or not it works is up to the viewer and stuff, but I think it's trying that. Whereas I don't think they would ever try that kind of stuff in a movie now.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I-
you watch No Way Home, and I mean, they literally like laugh at the idea of Dr. Octopus, right? They're like,
Yeah.
is that really your name or whatever? And I feel like that's not something this movie would like ever do, because it's just so all in and like, yes, of course he's Dr. Octopus. How can he
Yes.
not be? We're
I
all in
think-
on this concept.
I think also like them adding this element of Mary Jane and having the romance. I mean, obviously it's very true to the comic books. And if we're thinking about comic book couples, they are on the
Mhm.
definitely top 5 of the
Mhm.
most recognizable, at least. But I think they were definitely like, let's see if we can make sure women come to see this as well.
Yeah, I mean, it worked, made a bunch of money.
Yeah. I mean, Danielle and I were in line for it. Just
Yeah.
the
And
two
that-
of us.
After this, I think, is the Thanksgiving scene. Well, there's the scene where Peter like fights Green Goblin again, like the burning building.
Right.
No, so before that, Peter gets that job at the Bugle, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
he can take pictures of Spider-Man because he is Spider-Man.
Right.
And then the Green Goblin is trying to track down Spider-Man and after the fight, and he doses him, fucking doses Spider-Man. Which is so weird because he doses him, kidnaps him, puts him on this, I think they're on a roof, he doesn't wake up or whatever he says.
Yes.
And then he's just like,
And you can see Dafoe's eyes through the mask in this scene too,
Yes.
which just makes it creepier, I think.
it does. And he propositions him. I'm like, you
Yeah.
ain't killing, you're not unmasking him, you're not killing him. You just say, join me. Like
You and me
that's-
can run this town, Spider-Man.
And then he's like, think about it.
Check yes, check no.
Right.
And then that's the burning, then there's a burning building and he pretends to be this woman. So Spider-Man goes back
Hilarious.
into the
So
burning
funny.
building and he turns around. It's like a fucking soap opera. It's me, your twin sister, and I'm going to kill you.
Yes. So good. Hilarious.
And he's like, nobody says no to me,
Yes.
Just
And so
crazy.
Spidey gets out of there, but he gets like an injury in that match. He
Right.
got
Yes,
cut
he
in his
gets
arm.
cut.
And so he goes to Thanksgiving dinner, which Norman Osborn happens to be attending.
When Aunt May smacks his hands.
Yes,
Hell
so
yeah.
good.
First of all, that was some nasty shit. How are you gonna just put your fingers in? What was that like?
In the stuffing or whatever
in the
he's touching.
stuffing,
Yeah.
or I wasn't
He's
sure.
crazy, Danielle. He's a madman.
Aunt May slaps his hand and says, "Cut the goddamn turkey," and he looks like he is ready to backhand Aunt May. I was
Like
like,
70-year-old woman.
he's unhinged.
But yeah, so he gets like an injury on his arm and he like sneaks in to try to like, appear as if he's been there the whole time. And that's when like Dafoe sees like the blood drop that comes down from the ceiling. And he like kind of realizes during Thanksgiving dinner.
Which was fucking like ketchup with water.
Yeah,
It was
like
so
cherry
bad.
red blood.
Yes. But Dafoe realizes that he like puts 2 and 2 together and realizes that Peter Parker is Spider-Man in that scene.
I think you're skipping the most important detail, Mike, is that Peter had to beat an old woman with a stick for that cranberry sauce.
Yeah.
Which is played for a goof in a really sinister way.
I love how quickly he figures out that Spider-Man is I was gonna say Tobey McGuire is Peter, because in most of these movies the villain like doesn't know for the longest time or whatever, and then he just like storms out. And in this scene, you tell me, was it Green Goblin talking or was it just being a dick to Harry?
Terry and MJ, I should say.
Yeah, when he says like MJ is pretty much trash. Fuck that hoe if you want to get what you want and dip. Words verbatim.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't believe you, Danielle.
I think he
Why this got
quote-
PG-13?
Yeah. I think he says, "Do what you need to, then broom her," which is like
No, I think is that what he
words
says?
I've
Out
never
the
heard.
door?
I think he says get rid of her or something. I
No,
don't
he
know.
says,
says
broom.
broom.
Because I
Broom.
said, did he say groom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is broom, different
Yeah.
thing, I guess. But yeah, no, I think it's like half and half. I think Norman is, I think he, like the way he's kind of depicted in the beginning of the movie, he's like kind of disappointed in Harry in a lot of the sequences that you kind of see between the two of them, and he really likes Peter. Like he's like
Yeah.
taking a shine to Peter, and like, oh, I'm something of a scientist myself, and he offers him a job at Oscorp and all that kind of stuff. And Harry is like constantly trying to please him and like never getting the recognition that he wants, and that's before he becomes the Green Goblin. And so now he's like that element of his personality is still there, but it's like amplified because of the Green Goblin stuff that he's dealing with too. So I think it's like half and half.
Yeah, he said that trick ass hoe ain't marrying into this family, and he dips. He gets in the elevator and leaves. And of course, like everybody could hear this shit. Harry's dumbass comes back in, and Mary Jane's like, "Fuck you! You didn't stick up for me." And he's like, "You could hear that? The acting, fucking Academy Award winning." And she's like, "Yeah, the whole goddamn country could hear this." And she dips out. And again, a glimmer of hope or just happiness in Peter's eyes happen again, because
Seeing
like,
MJ and Harry break up.
he's just nodding like, "Yeah, bitch."
Just waiting my time out.
Right.
My
Right.
time.
Until Spider-Man 2. That's what's gonna happen.
It's going down.
Because these days you gotta have a sequel.
And then after this, the Goblin attacks Aunt May. Which is
The
Aunt May's like
craziest fucking scene.
the wild scene. I mean,
would
and
like to reenact.
works because it works because Dafoe sells it so much.
It does. He's unhinged, but he has to give credit to his scene partner, because Aunt
yes.
May was like, like, she falls off the fucking bed, and when I tell you, she screams from that fucking scene all the way to
Yes.
like you hear Peter's running to the hospital room, and you hear this wailing like, "Ah! Ah!" He gets there and he's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And she's like, "Those eyes, those eyes."
Right, yeah.
Ridiculous.
So good. I mean, the way that he makes her finish the prayer that she's doing, right? She's saying
Yeah.
Our Father, and he's like, "Finish it, from evil."
And then she's like continuing to do the prayer, but it's like she's doing an exorcism against him.
Yes.
Full of grace, Full
Yes.
of grace.
Great.
But yeah, so then after that, Aunt May goes to the hospital and Peter goes to visit her. He has that kind of scene with MJ where she's visiting and they kind of have a nice moment together. And Aunt May's watching them, like she wakes up and like sees them.
She's
And
a sneaky hoe.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
she has
I
that
love-
line, that sly line. It's like, oh, I haven't seen a smile on your face since MJ was here. Like,
You fucking nerd is the subtext of that. But I love when she has that moment after that Aunt May where she's like, kind of sort of to what Danielle's point was earlier about like the movie does feel a little confusing about the relationship between MJ and Peter, like before the movie, like that kind of history where it seems like MJ doesn't really know who Peter is. And Aunt May says that here, where she's like, "Well, everybody in the world knows you're in love with her except MJ." This is kind of
Tells
where
it
it all
like it
finally,
is.
where
Yeah.
it finally solidifies a little bit. But yeah, Aunt May's she knows, she's always
absolutely.
watching.
She's
Aunt May knows
watching,
everything.
She sees, but also like at this point, Harry comes with flowers, and MJ has her hands on Peter's hand, and it's because they both like break away so
Ugh.
quickly
Yeah.
that like if they just kept it like that, it would have been fine. Like his fucking aunt is in the hospital. Of course
Yeah.
he's gonna need to be consoled.
Consoled.
But
Yeah.
I swear, Harry's like, "Hey, May, how you doing?" And he's like looking at them. And as soon as he leaves the hospital, he runs to Daddy Warbucks and he's like, "Daddy, you're right. She is a trick asshole and she loves Peter now." And he's like,
You're
"Come here,
right.
son.
Again,
and let me
verbatim.
hug you."
Danielle has a
Verbatim.
way with words.
It's in the script. You buy the script online, you see exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Mhm, mhm.
Trick asshole.
Yes. and that's what like
Subtitle.
and that's what gets Dafoe to understand that like he knows that MJ is really important to Peter. He knows that Peter is Spider-Man, so now he knows how to get to Peter basically. Like he's already attacked Aunt May, and he basically reveals to Peter that he knows who he is like through the telephone, and
Right.
kidnaps Aunt May, and then holds her and a car full of children alongside the Queensboro Bridge.
Classic.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Wait,
I mean,
he doesn't take, he takes out May or Mary
No,
Jane?
Mary Jane.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
so
like,
that,
wait a
and
minute.
it's sort of the thing where it's like, do you save the woman you love or do you save the lives of all these children?
And Spider-Man says, "Both, bitch," and he
Yes.
does. He saves
That-
both of them.
Does it
Yes.
goes for MJ first.
Yes,
he
he does.
does go
Yeah,
for MJ
maybe not
first.
great optics,
Swings around, gets round
but he
the
does save
bridge.
both.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is
absolutely.
why I do not want to ever go on those damn I don't know what you call them.
the tram rides.
The
Gondola?
tram rides for
Because
going
you're
to
afraid of the
Randall
Green
Island.
Goblin coming out and
Yeah, fuck that. I
Yeah,
learned.
Willem Dafoe himself.
Yeah,
in the
Yeah.
sweatpants.
not Randall
Exactly.
Island. What? I'm not.
Roosevelt
saying-
Island?
Thank you. I don't know why I said Randall Island. I guess I'm not a
Um,
real New Yorker.
You've been away too long, Danielle.
If you were, you would be one of the people on this bridge.
Throwing shit at
Green
You
Goblin.
right. You fuck with Spider-Man, you fuck with New York, you want to
Yes.
get it.
Yeah, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
And again,
Which
verbatim.
I really like the cheesiness of this scene and like the kind of like just the fun like that like New York rousing thing. But that's also I think it's important to remember this was 2002. This is a year after 9/11.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like, this felt like I think part of the success of this movie is it sort of felt like a New York rallying cry. Like,
An
it's
ode
New
to
York
New York,
superhero and they have this moment and, this moment where he stands in front of the American flag and all that kind of stuff. Like there's that super like early 2000s patriotism that kind of drives some of that stuff in here, which is problematic in hindsight in a lot of it. But
Yeah.
in that
It's
moment, it was like
propaganda.
a rallying, cheering cry in the theater for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I have a little blockbuster story.
Oh,
So
History?
some history. So when Spider-Man's teaser trailer came out, there was
Yeah.
a scene, it was Spider-Man chasing bad guys that were getting away in a helicopter. And then he's making a web and you kind of just see close-ups. You don't know what he's really doing. And then like the last big reveal for the teaser trailer is he's fashioned this giant web in between the two towers and catches the helicopter like it's a fly.
yeah.
So they quickly,
Wow.
It's-
That's wild.
it's a really cool
Yeah.
trailer,
It is.
but like, so A Knight's Tale was the first VHS that was going to have that teaser trailer on it. And so as us at Blockbuster, we used to get the movies a week in advance so we could prep them, we could rent them early and stuff. And so I had a Knight's Tale at home, and we got a phone call like from our manager, and they're like, they're recalling all the Knight's Tale videos because they need to take that trailer out of it. They don't want them in there anymore. So that was my like little tidbit of history, is like, ooh, I had the Knight's Tale that had like the recalled trailer on it.
Right.
But it is a really cool trailer. I think you can watch it on YouTube.
I believe now it's on YouTube. You can watch it anytime you want. But at the time that was like, so I had heard about that. And I think that it may have played in some theaters for a little bit before it was, taken out, obviously. And I don't think I ever saw it in theaters. So it was one of those like mythical things where it's like, what could I ever see the Spider-Man trailer with the Twin Towers in it?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a really cool trailer.
Yeah, definitely.
Hello, kids of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Radical Ryan Hunter here from the Radical Retro Rewind podcast. Join me along with everyone's favorite brother, David, and the movie geek Rob every Friday as we discuss everything from movies, TV, video games, music, action figures, and more. Every week's another adventure. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and most podcasting platforms. Hope to see you there, radical ones.
So yeah, they do the thing. They attack the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. They fight. I mean, he saves Mary Jane. He saves the tram. The New Yorkers are throwing stuff at him, and they end up in like this kind of empty warehouse. And Peter and Norman are fighting. And Norman has that like moment of recognition where it seems like maybe he's returned back to normal, but in actuality, it's just a goblin trick. It's
like,
just a silly
Peter,
goblin
it's
trick.
me.
Yes.
It's me. Peter,
Take my
help
hand.
me.
Yes, which he does in the new one as well, in No Way Home.
Yeah.
And so he's doing that. But while he's doing that, and I think what I liked about Dafoe's performance too, is you kind of sort of believe it where like he believes it. Like I think you have that sort of mindset in Dafoe where he's like, he believes he's in control and the goblin's not in control, but the goblin actually is. And he's like absent-mindedly, like kind of messing with the glider controls in his arms, that the glider's like coming up behind Peter. And then of course, Peter does the backflip when he realizes what's happening. And he says, Godspeed, Spider-Man. And, and the glider comes through. Peter does the backflip and Norman accidentally kills himself with the glider.
I think we need to do a one-man show of
it's just
reenacting the entire Spider-Man movie. And I think you could do it.
I think so too.
I can at least do the Dafoe parts.
And then he did. Spider-Man didn't necessarily kill him. He killed himself. You wreck yourself pretty much. And he takes his dead body back to his house? ?
Yeah, well, I think he feels it a responsibility to Harry, with Harry being his best friend. He knows that it's Norman Osborn now. And, this is obviously going to be devastating for him to discover that his father was the Green Goblin and also that he's dead.
Yeah.
It's a lot for any person to take in.
Yeah.
And so he brings it over, but, has the Spider-Man mask on. And, Harry gets the idea in his head that Spider-Man killed the Green Goblin, which is how it kind of gets out there in the press. And that's what the story becomes. And Peter lets that become the story because it's better. He believes it's better that Harry believes that rather than know the truth that his father killed himself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy where Norman tells him essentially everyone's going to turn on you at some point and you're going to become the villain.
Which any good Spider-Man story should have everyone in New York hating Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like I said, everything should be going bad for Peter Parker and Spider-Man at all times.
We can't have good things ever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Never.
And then the next scene is they're at the graveyard.
Yep.
And, obviously Harry is on his journey for vengeance.
Yes.
Mhm.
He says he's going to kill Spider-Man himself, basically.
Yes. And so Peter's like, good luck on that journey. And then he goes to see Uncle Ben and, his Aunt May's there and they talk. I don't know if it's important. Anywho, I stopped really paying attention at this point. I'm not going to lie.
So Mary Jane kind of comes up to Peter and starts to kind of confess to him that's, in that moment where she thought she was going to die because the Green Goblin was dropping her, there was only one person she was thinking of, and it wasn't the person that she thought it would be. It was you, Peter. And, they have a kiss and they, have that moment together. And then Peter kind of pulls back from it. And,
Fuck boy shit.
This is the thing he's wanted this entire movie. Like what he's wanted his entire life is to, have a relationship with MJ. And he now realizes that the people close to him are the people that are going to be hurt the most because of his Spider-Man abilities. And because, the people who are out there like the Green Goblin are going to, cause more chaos like that.
But does he dead Aunt May? Like, this makes no sense to me. Like, it would make sense if he's like, you know what, Aunt May, I can't be around you anymore. He doesn't do that.
I'm not sure he can get Aunt May out of his life that easily.
But still,
she just lost her husband, Danielle.
I'm just saying, his thought process is fucking stupid.
Yeah, but he's also, he sees Aunt May, every once in a while. She's in Queens. She's, all the way in Queens. He's doing most of the stuff in Manhattan. That's where that's where
right. I'm just in another borough. Nobody's gonna find out May again because then I gave her holy water this time for her next exorcism.
Right.
Someone tries to come at her.
And she does get into a scuffle with Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2, actually.
Yeah.
So there is that. Which is one of the best scenes in that movie. That's great. But he has that moment with Mary Jane and he tells her that they can only be friends. And then he walks away and he has the voiceover and says, with great power comes great responsibility. And then the credits roll.
But Mary Jane does have this realization after No Lips Magoo walks away. And she's like, oh my God, that kiss, it feels familiar.
Yes.
Yeah.
She definitely, that definitely is there. And then that's a big part of Spider-Man 2 is, her kind of, she doesn't put it together at the beginning of the movie or anything, but it's on her mind. And she has that moment in Spider-Man 2 where she kisses her fiance and she asks him to kiss her upside down. And she
now she's got this fetish.
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing now.
It's a whole thing. This was a pretty revolutionary thing for MJ for sure.
And now that is Spider-Man.
That is Spider-Man.
That is Spider-Man 2002.
Yes, indeed.
Do we have any more fun facts that we want to throw out there before we get to our ratings?
We do have a Stan Lee cameo. He is in the parade. And you just see him very briefly, and he had an extended role, but it was cut down.
He's got the Jimmy Buffett cameo from
Jurassic World.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Just running.
Yeah. This was back. If you look at the Stan Lee cameos around this time, all of them are like that, basically. Innocent Bystander #2 or whatever it is. I think his first on-screen line of dialogue is in Spider-Man 3, actually, which is one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos when he walks up to Peter and says, I think one person can make a difference. Enough said. He walks away.
Yeah.
Was he?
A good cameo.
My favorite is the hot dog vendor. Is that X-Men?
I think that's X-Men. He's on the beach, right?
No, he's in the city and he's just a hot dog vendor, selling street meat.
Okay.
It's my favorite.
I think it is one of the X-Men's for sure.
Stan Lee revealed that Michael Jackson wanted to play Spider-Man in the 90s. That would have been very interesting.
What? James Cameron directed Michael Jackson's starring Spider-Man.
That is...
What a world we could have lived in.
That could have corrected the timeline we're currently on, yeah.
I do like that.
Or made it way worse, who's to say?
I do like the actor. So here's the list of the actors that were considered to play J. Jonah Jameson. Arlie Ermey, Hugh Laurie. Who's Harv Presnell?
I don't know.
That name rings a bell, but I'm blanking on who it is.
Dennis Farina, Michael Keaton, Fred Ward, and Bill Paxton. But I think I don't think I would have minded Hugh Laurie. I don't know why, but
I think Hugh Laurie could have been good. I mean, especially in 2002, if we didn't know that J.K. Simmons delivered the perfect J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
I think Hugh Laurie could have been a pretty good one for sure. I also think Arlie Ermey, who's the drill instructor in Full Metal Jacket, could have been a really great one too.
Yeah. I think Bill Paxton or Fred Ward, or more Fred Ward would have been fun.
Fred Ward would have been good, yeah. And Harv Presnell, by the way, is a character actor from Fargo, Saving Private Ryan, and he had recurring roles on Lois and Clark and Dawson's Creek.
Dawson's Creek.
Who could forget him?
3, Green Goblin. Oh, the Green Goblin was chosen as the film's main villain since Sam Raimi felt the father-son theme, Norman and Harry, and Peter would make the film deeper. Interesting. It did.
That tracks. And he's also like just one of the big name Spider-Man villains too, which I think especially at this time, like if you're going to do a marquee superhero blockbuster, you need like a marquee super villain to go along with it.
Yeah.
You know, the X-Men movies had Magneto and that kind of thing, like names that like general audiences might know. Whereas now you can put out the new Thor movie and Christian Bale's playing Gore the God Butcher and everyone's like, yeah, sure, why not?
Sure.
But they did say that Dr. Octopus was in the early draft of the script to appear as a second bad guy. But later on in pre-production, it was decided that he'd be reassigned to the Spider-Man 2 movie, which is what we got.
Yeah, interesting. Especially because a lot of the Spider movies have the problem of having too many villains.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that they like thought about that in this movie and then didn't think about it in later movies.
Threw it out the window in later movies. The film's climax is based on the infamous The Amazing Spider-Man number 121, the night when Stacy died.
Yep.
And at Osborn's funeral, a gravestone nearby says Stacy on it.
Oh,
homage.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Because Gwen Stacy actually does appear in Spider-Man 3, played by Bryce Dallas Howard.
Oh yeah.
So one of those things that Mike was talking about, where it's like, you know, they're just kind of tossing in Easter eggs without thinking about, you know, sequelizing it or anything like that, turning into a big franchise. But they do. I mean, obviously, the night Gwen Stacy died also became the basis for Gwen Stacy's character in the Andrew Garfield movies too.
Yeah.
Which it always felt like when they introduced Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, everyone was like, okay, but when are they going to kill her? And I was always like, I feel like they could just skip the kill. Like she was good in these movies. You know,
Emma Stone. Like,
she's great.
Do you want her to come back for Spider-Gwen?
Oh, I was 100% hoping that she would have popped up in Spider-Man No Way Home as like a version of Spider-Gwen. I thought that would have been incredible.
Yeah.
Like that would have been great.
Galaxy Brain.
And this movie was released in 2002, which was Spider-Man's 40th anniversary, which would make this Spider-Man's 60th anniversary.
Yeah, actually, it was just a couple of days ago, I believe, was the 60th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
As of this recording. I don't know when this is coming out, but
all right. Well, guys, why don't you tell everybody your social handles so that they can follow along and listen to your podcast?
Absolutely. Mike, why don't you go first?
Sure. You can follow me at MD Film Blog on Twitter and Letterboxd. And I guess also if you want to donate to support our podcast, you can do that at our Ko-fi page, which is kofi.com/Mike and Mike pods, plural, because we have 2 podcasts.
Yes, we do. You can follow me online. It's a M Smith Film Blog on Twitter, Mike Smith Film on Letterboxd, Radio Mike Sandwich on Instagram. And also you can follow our podcast at Mike and Mike Pod on Twitter or at Goldblum Pod for now on Twitter for the other podcast. Because again, we're changing the name. I really wish we had figured out a new name before we came on this podcast. But oh well.
If you guys have suggestions for the guy's new podcast name, hit him up on their socials. And
there you go. If anybody wants to check out the episode of our podcast that Danielle popped up on a while back.
Oh, yes.
We reviewed My Girl 2 back in December.
My favorite.
Which we almost had to review again for the Complete Works because Jamie Lee Curtis almost won the poll. Was part of the poll at least.
And I would have come right back.
I think we may have had you on for My Girl 1 just to diversify it a little bit.
I guess.
But yeah, we do have a My Girl 2 episode with Danielle. That is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Haven't listened to their trailer episode with us, pause or end this and go listen because it's good. It's fun. We had a good time. And if you have any hot takes or you want to yell at us for anything, because that's usually what gets you going, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube at No More Late Fees. And let's get into the ratings. I'll start with Mike D. What is your present day rating for Spider-Man?
Oh, buy again. Come on, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Buy again. I own the trilogy I bought the trilogy Blu-ray ahead of Spider-Man No Way Home, but I was holding on to my DVDs for a very long time. Yeah, these movies rule. And I think this first one is I think probably my third favorite Spider-Man movie behind Spider-Verse and Spider-Man 2 at like number 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
But Spider-Man 2 is again the pinnacle of all superhero movies, and this one is also very good.
Jackie?
It's a no for me, dog.
It's a no.
Man.
I'm not going to give it a same day. I'll give it a 2-day, but
what if I dubbed over all of Willem Dafoe's lines with my own voice?
That I would watch. I will come to your one-man show when you perform this movie.
Fair enough.
For me, it's a 5-day rental. It didn't age very well for me, but that, Willem Dafoe, really his performance visually, I just think it's great. The nostalgia of it all. Yeah. And I laughed a lot. I'm sure that's not what they wanted, but
I think that is part of like what they're doing. You know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
like laugh lines in this movie and a lot of like stuff that is like deliberately campy, which is a big Sam Raimi thing.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I could watch Aunt May and her exorcism like
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you have hot takes you'd like to share with us, call into our quick drop 909-601 and MLF 909-601-6653. Twat us at the Twitter or leave a voice message at our Anchor FM account. Leave feedback, suggest future movies, what you like, disliked. Give us corrections, share your blockbuster video stories, share your favorite moments from the pod, and you can be featured on a future episode.
Stay tuned for next week because it's my birthday, bitches.
Happy
Nice.
birthday to you.
Yeah.
And to celebrate, we're going to be wishing and hoping and saying a little prayer for my crazy ass with my best friend's wedding.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fun one. And
Yeah,
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And as always, be kind and rewind.